Hello, welcome back to another book review that I have for you. Hopefully that you're doing well, your mental status is good, you're always growing in many different ways, you're trying to figure out and question a little bit about the world and maybe about yourself. You're getting yourself more advanced, uh, more ethical every single day. And that's always what you try to do. You try to discipline yourself. It's a lot with practice and dedication, and you just try to, open your eyes to a whole bunch of things that happen throughout the world and today. And it's always good to just keep growing and keep learning. And so that's kind of the reason I do this with you is to kind of when I'm reading these books myself, I kind of want to share them and kind of share what the authors are kind of really pointing out just because maybe you don't have enough time reading for yourself. And sometimes it's always hard to read too. Reading takes a lot of practice and patience. But it's always good to do something for yourself every month if you can, at least maybe one book. But anyway, on that note, is that I have an interesting book today. It's called On Intelligence by Jeff Hawkins. And it's really not a lengthy book. When I say lengthy book, it's about 200 pages. This is about 2003, and Jeff in the book. I don't know if you're familiar with the Palm Pilot, but Palm Pilots, they were little devices. I guess electronics before, kind of like maybe after the flip phones, but they were just organizers, and he was the creator of this. But his book kind of talks about the intelligence of a computer in a brain, like a person, and kind of see what the kind of the interconnectedness and what really intelligence is. And so he kind of goes through a lot with the human brain and how we use intelligence, creativity, and kind of associate that to maybe like what a computer can do. And today we have AI and Chat GDP, and I don't know what the future is going to tell with that. And it's just like, is that really taking away that creativity and that intelligence that we are trying to gain through books and just reading all together and experiences? So kind of needs to be a little bit more updated, I think. But this was written in 2003, I do believe. So it's a fairly older book. So anyway, um, his new theory really is how the human brain works, particularly focusing on the neurocortex, which is your kind of your brain and how it's kind of connected in different ways, and it kind of familiarizes, if you don't know what the brain looks like, is that the brain kind of looks like this kind of guy here on the side view, and you have compartments of the brain that is very they do very important jobs as you go along. And so you have two hemispheres, and scientists say that if you hold your two hands up and make fists, this is kind of like the size of your brain. And so if you know anything about the brain, you have different crevices, and you have two hemispheres, the left and the right, and they control the right side of your body. The other one controls the other side of the body, and the way your eyes are as well. And so it's about 3 pounds. Your whole head is about 10 pounds as you become an adult, and your prefrontal cortex, which is right up here, that doesn't quit developing until about age 25. So that's very important to kind of make sure you don't modify it, with smoking, cigarettes, weed, whatever, and alcohol use at such a young age, because what you're doing, you're disrupting the connectiveness to your brain. And that's kind of the reason why we tell young kids not to do all that stuff when you're young, because it's going to screw your brain up. And so it comes with a lot of experience too, and you got to have to kind of look at it as well and do some observations. But anyway, enough on that. But he kind of says that intelligence is really all around your brain, and we like to look at patterns as human nature. We look at patterns to help us predict the future from past experiences, and we base ourselves on perception, thought, and then that's how we behave. Uh, Behavior is really how you are exposed to the environment. We play this game of nature versus nurture. And if you don't know anything about nature versus nurture, nurture is how you are raised. Nature is kind of like what's the environment going on, and that's kind of the difference of those two. And if you want to look this more up, if you take identical twins and you put them in a different environment, you're going to see some of the different aspects of the two growing up. And you can look at twin studies out there. Very interesting. But we all make mistakes, and the human brain does this. And a computer has, kind of like the different kind of set structures. And does a computer makes mistakes too? I guess, yeah. I mean, there's things that we can look up that are wrong. And so we're kind of going to focus on the brain real quick, and then we're going to go to technology, computers. So on the human brain, we are very complex organisms, believe it or not. Okay, we all pretty much look and feel the same. The psychology is the only thing that's different, if you think about it. But we have sight, we have new insights all the time. We want to think. Sometimes we want to ask why, and we want to be curious. But we also want to be aware of the environment. And that's kind of what our brain is kind of helping us do, is with our senses, we are looking at different things, feeling, hearing, tasting, smelling, all kinds of stuff in our senses that give us the environment we live in. And it's very interesting as we kind of build a memory bank. And memory is really important. And there's a difference between long-term and short-term memory, or working memory. And we can discuss that later. But, what gives our structure is we have this thing called like DNA, dinucleic acid. We've had this new data that kind of is our coding. So when we're born, the DNA is saying, okay, you're going to be placing this with there, you're going to be placing this with there, you're going to be placing this with there, and it's our code that makes us grow as a person. And if we get hurt when we're older, our DNA kind of has a code to say, okay, you're doing there, you're doing there. We have four base pairs that are telling us what to accomplish and how to code. And sometimes one of those codes misfires, and that's where you get like a mutation, or you get some kind of I don't want to say cancer. I guess you can say cancer, but I'm not trying to be very mean about that. But yeah, that's where the DNA code can give you problems if it misses. And sometimes that happens with exposure to other outside dilutants. And so James Watson, the founder of looking at DNA, he knew some of this, but he knew that we had this code that kind of demonstrated this double helix of our gives us our whereabouts, right? And a computer kind of doesn't do that. A computer kind of works with like the with the world, but it has RAM, random access memory, and it has these little compartments that it kind of gets things from and learns from them too. And that's kind of the thing about computers, is that they're different from the brain, is that we kind of go through the environment. Computer has to be programmed. And so a lot of people say, oh, we are programmed. We're programmed to a certain extent, I think, through our nurture, and maybe through our nature. Depends on where we are. So there's a lot of controversy on this. But, in our brain, we have trillions of neurons, neural collections. And neurons are, there's a little worm-like with dendrites and axons, and we have trillions of them. And when we're born, we have them all over the place. And then what happens is, as we grow, they start what we call pruning. That means they start kind of disappearing and deteriorating. And that pruning phase is very important as the baby infancy grows, is that you want to kind of connect those, because there is some kind of abnormalities that could happen when that pruning doesn't actually do its job. And I don't want to get into the more of that part, because this is about our book on intelligence here, but there's a lot of good stuff, that kind of subtopics to that. And so you have these many neurons that play the importance in our brain, and they're all over. And I think we have a lot of them in our cerebellum, our back. And let me kind of show you that picture one more time. And so we have a lot of them in that cerebellum right there. And that gives you your like coordination. So if you hit that, you kind of get dizzy. And that's kind of what happens. You don't want to hit the back of your head. And so these neurons, they play a very important a task in the brain. And so no neurons touch, by the way, because if they did touch, think of it this way. You know how you have a computer and what happens when you have an electrical storm or maybe you have a powerful magnet and you have a powerful magnet and you touch the computer. Well, it starts to go and then shut down. Well, think of it this way. We are electrical. We're very electrical and we're very chemical. And so no neuron touches because if one neuron has problems, the other one is not being affected. But think of it this way. If they were connected and this one started to have a lot of issues, this one would be affected too. The whole system shuts down. So no neurological or no neuron is connected to your brain. We have little paths. And between those paths, you have dendrites and axons. I forgot the name. Come to memory here, but no two are touching, and you have this exchange of chemicals. So we have electrical to chemical to electrical. And that's kind of what we do to transfer a lot of information. And we can go a lot more on that. Believe me, I would love to. Maybe another video. But it's kind of really our memory, how we are building intelligence is basically building our perception from memory and experiences and what we see the world. And we associate things to real life. I think it was Aristotle that said if you really want to know something and keep it in your memory, you have to associate it to something that you have in the real world. And so, especially some science and math person, you maybe have a parabola. A parabola kind of this you throw a rock in the air, it reaches its point, and then it comes back down, right? Because of gravity. And then you kind of say, well, how do I associate that? Well, when you're doing math and you're doing quadratics, like a parabola, you can say, well, that's associated with a rock thrown in the air or a spitball in the air or something in the air, projectile. And so that's kind of how you're associating that thing to what we know as a parabola. And so, theories come and go. And a lot of times from memory, we learn through practical experiences, sensations, perceptions, and pass down information from other things. And, Nicholas Copernicus back in, 1495, he was born, about 1495 around there. And, he had a theory that, hey, you know what? The Earth is not the center of the universe. It's actually this big old ball of gas called the sun, and then the 4 planets rotate around that. And a lot of people, we believe that that the Earth was the center for a long time, but based off those perceptions and experiences and passed down knowledge, and so our memory kind of got conflicted a little bit as that new stuff went out. So we have to replace that old memory with the other one. And that's kind of maybe what a computer does too, is that, if you want to delete something on your programs in your computer, it kind of replaces that fact and gets deleted in the trash can. And so I guess you can kind of say, how you want to make a software more developed is that you're kind of enriching the software operations. And so theories change and they can be accepted later. And that's kind of what happened with this newfound knowledge of Copernicus, right? And then, our 3-pound brain is, like cauliflower. If you ever know what cauliflower is, you go to the store, pick up some cauliflower. It's kind of like what the information of your brain is. And you kind of see the ridges and the valleys. A lot of people, I think scientists say this, that the more rivets or valleys you have in your brain, so can I show you this picture again? The more ridges that you have in your brain, they say that the more intelligent you become. And I'm not a neuroscientist, so I'm accepting what I read and a lot of textbooks. So I hope that's true. You might want to look that up just in case. But they say that if you have a person that has more ridges like this and more valleys, that you're actually more critically and you're more intelligent in different ways. And so, The hippocampus, kind of show you the hippocampus again in the book. Hippocampus is right there. That's kind of where our main memory is, and that's kind of where it's stored. But I've heard that long-term memory, the stuff that you might have learned a long time ago back in your childhood, is actually stored everywhere. So people that get brain damage in maybe certain parts, they can actually remember other things from their childhood. So maybe dementia patients actually can remember stuff that they did a long time ago because memory is displaced everywhere in the brain. And long-term, it is not, because it's short-term, it's active memory. So it's kind of like when we hear things from the outside, we have waves that are coming into our brain and our eardrum through our hair follicles in our ear, and then it goes to the cochlea, which is kind of like this snail-shaped thing in the ear, translates those waves into electrical impulses into our brain to kind of understand what we're hearing. And that's based on a lot of perception and experiences through what our universe is. So you're building up this memory bank. In a computer, we have to have things programmable into that computer to make things work. So I think the whole thing of this is that, one is you're gaining things from the outside environment, the other one that you're just throwing stuff in there. And so you're kind of seeing the computer and our human intelligence, they're almost like a teeter-totter effect. And that might not be new to you, but it's kind of cool because, I'm just kind of giving a review on this book here, and he talks a lot about that. But, our memory is everywhere. There's active memory and long-term memory, and we like to see patterns. And those patterns predict what we are experiencing for the next time. And we're making sense of these functions throughout our lifetime. And it's very sweet. And it kind of builds our spatial memory, our spatial thinking. And this is why geometry is so good to have for everybody, because geometry, even though that maybe people don't like math, which is it makes me kind of weary about that, because I think it's the right teacher and what you're doing to like math. I don't think nobody dislikes math. It's just what you experienced at the time and what you did to help yourself out with that. And that's a mentor leadership stuff. So I hope I'm not offending you, but think about it. But back to geometry again. It's good to have a geometry course because it teaches your brain to kind of see different things in a logical fashion rather than just, oh, here's some basic shapes. But think of it this way: when you take geometry course or take something like that, your spatial reasoning skills become more fluid. And so you're kind of, sensing sequences, you're kind of sensing patterns, and you're setting this stuff into a hierarchical need. And Plato, a famous Greek back then, Plato believed that everything become with our soul. When we're born, we are getting things through form. And you can look more of that up. And I don't know. Intelligence is a little bit hard to define, because people think of the souls that were passed down. We have a soul. Maybe we know everything already, and we're just finding clues of that information. Don't know, but think of it like the certain animals. So the dolphin, for example, has a huge brain, and they're actually very intelligent. But there's a skim line between human intelligence and those type of animals. And so, if you ever look at a dolphin brain, I mean, they know patterns, they know how to think. Even mice, even pigeons, they actually have a memory, but they are different than human brain because of their complexity and their neurological systems. And so there's a lot more on that. But we as humans, we use what we call a top-down approach. You think of it this way: go to the ocean, look out, you see the water, you see the waves crashing, you see the mouth, you see like little rock formations. What we're looking at, the big picture. If somebody was going to there and they said, okay, I'm going to go to the ocean, but I'm going to look at it as a bottom top, that means they're looking at the basic foundations, the fundamentals. before they get to the big drum, the big general idea. And that's kind of what we are doing through a species, is that sometimes we are very prejudging, and our brain kind of does this with us. We go out and we kind of judge people. I think I read in a social psychology book that it only takes us about 10 to 15 seconds to judge somebody just like that, on the way they speak, talk, look, dress. It's crazy. And if you kind of minimize that, kind of look at, hey, deep inside as a bottom to top approach, it's interesting. We kind of see, people who they are. And we need to start doing that more, is thinking and say, hey, you know what? People are just like us. We all want the same thing. We're all built the same. We just maybe look and act differently. Well, that's just psychology. That's nature and nurture. And there's more on that. And so we have this hierarchy. And then, we have creativity and consciousness. Now, computers, do they have creativity? I mean, we think they have creativity if we program something into them. What's consciousness then? I mean, we're getting to a point we have like AI. And is AI going to have a conscious? Is AI going to have we're going to build robots that they're going to have a conscious and then they have a think just like we are? Don't know. But what is creativity? Creativity is that your prediction by analogy. We're forming from the past to the future. We focus on our environment. We're looking at memories when we were growing up, pass down information. How can we improve our creativity? Well, we practice more, we solve problems, we socialize with people, we do a lot of discovery, we're very curious. And those are things that are helping us be creative, and that adds on to our intelligence seeking. What is consciousness? Consciousness is being self-aware of of things around you. It's using our senses to help. It's using the thoughts and our actions. It's maybe using our experiences through what we're trying to accomplish in everyday things. But a lot of it comes with imagination too. And I think it was Albert Einstein says that, don't lose your imagination. Imagination's everything. And, technology isn't really lessening our imagination. When we use ChatGPT to help search to break up a relationship, well, okay, I understand you're using this device or the software to help you maybe get the words and motions to maybe end a relationship, but you also need to understand it shouldn't come from that. It should come from you based on that, because that's going to help you later on. And maybe that wasn't just passed out enough to say, if you don't like something, here's how you do it. And again, that was from your experiences of being having an adult look down at you and say, hey, you know what? Let me be your guide. Let me help you, and let me show you the correct path. And that's kind of what technology is doing. It's kind of substituting that area of expertise. And that's kind of like the difference between humans and computers. It's when you don't have a human or a reliable partner or reliable person to help you through things, you look through another resources, which is AI or something like that to help you out. And so that's kind of where the line is being drawn through all this. There's a thing called Gorman. I think it's Gordon Moore. Gordon Moore was a co-founder of Intel, the chip, about 1965, I do believe. But he says that the little transistors that are in a computer, like the memory, they're transistors. If you don't know anything about transistors, they kind of lower the voltage and up their voltage and stuff like that. They kind of store, and they're kind of like this. The little box. So I don't have one to show you. It's called a transistor. Anyway, think of it this way. He was saying that, every 2 years, everything is becoming faster, cheaper, and accessible. Every 2 years, everything doubles exponentially. And everything's becoming bigger, like the IBMs When they first came out, they were this big giant. You came to walk in the room, hot, giving off a lot of energy. Now look at what your computer is right now. Look what you're doing. Very teeny. You can't even see it. And it's interesting as every couple years things get much more efficient and better and cheaper, but I think scarier too sometimes because you don't know. But intelligence is such a broad category, both in human and technology, and it's really hard to define intelligence. And you might want to do this through your own life too. Is that everybody's life experiences is going to be different than somebody else, and maybe you've had the same life experiences, but I think it's how you perceive it to help you associate to what you do in life. And so that's kind of what the difference is of how we all think. Religion, I don't want to go off on all this, but religion kind of maybe it helps that, or maybe it burdens it. I don't know. And I don't want to offend anybody out there, but think of it a lot. Religion does do a lot to the human brain too, and there's a whole lot of debate on that. But just think about kind of like the ideas of this too. That everything that's being kind of passed down has been from past information from people that have been here before, and we're trying to make up our own mind to see what it is all about. And so maybe there is a defined moment of creativity or intelligence. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. I'm hoping that you're finding this book so powerful, and I recommend getting it. And it's not, like I said, it's the 2003. It's not a very lengthy book. I think I got it on Amazon. Or maybe at a bookstore. But it's very powerful, and it talks a lot about what we're talking about. But you got to have fill-ins too. So, good topic, and I really like this topic actually. But hopefully you got a lot of good stuff from that, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you very much.